My name is Sarah Bennett, 36 years old, living in the suburbs of Denver. 6 months ago, I still thought my life was simple yet fulfilling. A peaceful home with my husband, Logan, the person I trusted more than anyone in the world, and an accounting job that allowed me to manage our finances while nurturing small dreams. Then, cancer came like a sudden storm in a clear sky. Now I'm in the third round of chemotherapy. My body feels as worn down as an old house in the middle of a storm, and my spirit is always stretched tight like a string. Every night, lying in the stark white room of the hospital, I remind myself to be strong, to survive, for Logan and for myself. At first, Logan was always by my side. He held my hand during my first chemo session, wiped the sweat from my forehead when the nausea hit. "You're the bravest warrior I've ever known," he whispered in my ear. And I believed those words like I believed in the light at the end of the tunnel. But gradually that light faded. Logan started to be absent more often. He claimed urgent work, important projects, and meetings that dragged late into the night. There were nights when I texted him and got no reply, just a few short lines. "I'm exhausted, go to sleep, honey." I consoled myself that he was tired like I was, that he needed space to balance work and the pain we were both carrying. But a corner of my heart began to crack. That afternoon, after 3 straight hours of chemo, I sat dazed in the waiting room of the oncology center, my hands trembling as I held my phone. Suddenly, a hunch made me open the banking app, something I rarely did because Logan usually managed our expenses. I only meant to check if we had enough to pay for the latest test bill. The screen displayed cold numbers. My heart pounded when I saw 3 large transfers, all within the past 2 weeks. One for $248,500, another for $120,000, and the last for $89,000. The recipient, an account under the name Rachel Monroe, a name so familiar it made my throat tighten. Rachel Monroe. The health consultant Logan had hired 2 months ago to help me balance my emotions and support my treatment. Rachel was gentle, tactful, always carrying essential oils and herbal teas, her warm smile lighting up our home. At first I was grateful because Logan had thought of me. But now, a chilling feeling rose inside me. I wondered, why would Logan transfer such huge amounts to Rachel? Wasn't she just a health consultant? Questions flooded my mind, making me dizzier than the post-chemo nausea. I looked around the waiting room. The sound of IV machines, the shuffle of doctors' shoes, someone's sigh. All of it felt distant, faded. All I could hear was the rapid thumping of my heart, and the figures on the banking screen felt like blades cutting deep into me. In that moment, I knew I could no longer blindly trust. Logan, the man I had placed my deepest faith in, who once promised to hold my hand to the end of the road, was likely hiding something. After all these months of just trying to survive, a strange new strength rose within me. I needed to know the truth, no matter how cruel that truth might be. Since that afternoon, everything in my life began to change, not because of the disease consuming my body, but because of a truth slowly revealing itself. I was fighting alone in my own home. Logan, who had once been my rock, now felt as distant as if the space between us were measured not in feet, but in the long days and nights he left me alone with pain and doubt. He no longer took me to the hospital, no longer waited in the lobby with worried eyes like he did in the beginning. Instead, he had endless reasons. I have a sudden meeting, I have to attend a seminar, and more recently, I signed up for a meditation retreat to help me balance my emotions so I can take better care of you. It sounded noble, but every time he left, I was left sitting alone on the cold chair in the chemo room, swallowing back tears. I started seeing Rachel Monroe more and more in what used to be my home. At first, it was a few visits a week, then gradually she was there nearly every day, brewing herbal tea, cooking light soups, straightening the throw pillows like she belonged there. Rachel was gentle, her voice soft, but the look in her eyes as she glanced around the house gave me chills. It wasn't the look of someone there to help a patient, but the gaze of someone who had crossed the boundary of respect, as if she already considered herself part of this place. I remember one drizzly morning when I came out from the bedroom into the living room and caught Rachel standing by the window, holding a porcelain mug printed with a picture of Logan and me, a gift from our wedding anniversary. She raised the mug to her lips, took a sip, gazing thoughtfully at the garden, completely unaware I was there. "You're drinking my tea?" I asked, my voice weak but enough to startle her. Rachel turned, smiling naturally. "Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah, I just thought this tea would help me relax a little before taking care of you." That light-as-air statement felt like yet another knife carving deeper into the trust that had already cracked. At night, when I lay alone in my room, I heard Logan's voice in the living room as he spoke on the phone, his tone warm and cheerful, the kind of tone he hadn't used with me in so long. Once I peeked through the door and saw him sitting close to Rachel, both of them sharing quiet laughter like they held a sweet secret. "What life are you living, Logan?" I wondered silently, my heart tightening. Day by day, his absences became constant. When he left the house, there were no more apologies or promises. Instead, there were phrases like, "I need to find peace. I have to rediscover myself so I can be your rock." But in his eyes, all I saw was restlessness and avoidance, as if my existence was a burden he longed to cast off. And Rachel, she appeared like a shadow in every corner of the house, folding my blanket, adjusting my pillow, placing her hand on my shoulder with a pitying look that made my skin crawl. I gradually felt like a guest in my own home, while she and Logan, it was as if they shared a rhythm of life where I was just an outsider. The chemo sessions became torture not just because of the physical pain, but because every time I left the hospital, I no longer hoped to see Logan, waiting with open arms. I knew, somewhere out there, he was living another life, a life I was no longer a part of. And in those lonely moments, as the rain tapped against the hospital window, I swore to myself, I had to find the truth. I had to reclaim what was mine before everything was erased, as if I had never existed. Since Logan and Rachel began to appear like haunting shadows in my life, I tried to convince myself. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe the illness had made my mind suspicious. But with each passing day, seeing Logan's evasive eyes, hearing Rachel's sweet yet fake voice ring out in what used to be my home, I knew. This was no longer doubt. This was the truth I needed to face head-on. One drizzly night, as thunder outside mingled with the chaotic pounding of my heart, I pushed myself up from the bed that had felt cold for so long. Logan was fast asleep on the downstairs sofa, his new habit which he excused as wanting me to sleep better. I quietly made my way down to his office, where he often worked late on his laptop. My hands trembled from weakness but were steady enough to open the laptop. Whether by luck or, more accurately, his carelessness, the password was still my birthday, the detail that made me let out a bitter laugh. He once said I was his whole world, and now, that very date opened up the harshest truth of my life. I searched through every folder, every file, every email. My eyes stopped at a file named Future Project Model Home. My heart nearly stopped as I opened it. A lease contract for a luxury apartment located by Aurora Lake, the place we once dreamed of buying a house to retire in. The renter's name was Rachel Monroe, but all the deposits, maintenance fees, even the initial furnishings, had been paid for with Logan's credit card. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. It wasn't enough. I needed certainty, something undeniable. I kept digging through emails, saved drafts. A conversation between Logan and Rachel appeared. "How much longer do you think before it's all done?" Rachel messaged. "Not long. She's clearly getting weaker. Just a few more steps," Logan replied. "I don't want to keep waiting like this, Logan. Don't make me push you again." I felt an icy chill run from the base of my skull down to my heels. All my doubts had turned into truth. They weren't just betraying me. They saw me as an obstacle that was almost out of their way. The next morning I called Emily, my sister. My voice was strangely calm as I asked, "Can you take me somewhere? Don't ask anything, just help me." Emily didn't ask, just gently drove to the address I gave, the luxury apartment complex by Aurora Lake. On the way I stayed silent, my eyes following the rain-soaked trees outside the window, my heart eerily empty. The car stopped a short distance from the building. I didn't have the strength to get out, just sat there, looking through the fogged glass. After a moment, the glass doors on the ground floor opened. Logan came out first, looking relieved, wearing a light-colored shirt I hadn't seen him wear around me in ages. Rachel followed, her arm lightly looped through his, her hair falling gently, her face radiant, as if she'd just had a perfect day. They laughed. Logan leaned down to whisper in Rachel's ear and she giggled, resting her head on his shoulder. I bit my lip, my hand gripping the car seat until it went numb. Everything I had seen, everything I had read the night before, now stood clear before my eyes. They had truly begun another life. A life without me. A life where, in their eyes, I was the past, or worse, just a burden waiting to disappear. Emily turned to me, eyes filled with concern. "Sarah, are you okay?" I forced a smile, my voice hoarse. "I'm okay, I just saw what I needed to see." The car rolled slowly away. In my mind only one thought remained, clear as the thunder outside. I wouldn't let them erase me from this life so easily. From that afternoon, after witnessing Logan and Rachel hand in hand leaving that lakeside apartment, I knew that if I still hoped for remorse from them, I was the one living in an illusion. Back home, I looked around the living room, a place once filled with happy memories, now feeling like a stage where I had been pushed out of my own play. I started with the smallest things. Each morning, I still let Rachel make me ginger honey tea, still let her adjust the pillows, tuck in the blanket, even offered a faint smile when she pretended to be caring. In their eyes I was still Sarah, the weak woman, exhausted from chemo, too drained to suspect anything. Logan began to relax, thinking everything was going according to plan. He no longer hid his late-night calls, didn't bother to close his laptop when leaving it open on the kitchen table. They were too confident, and that confidence led to carelessness. I asked Emily to contact someone she knew in tech to help me install a tiny camera in the living room, right on the bookshelf with a clear view from the kitchen to the sofa. I told Emily, "I just need you to help me set it up. I'll handle the rest. Don't ask anything, I promise you'll understand soon enough." The camera connected to my phone. That first night I lay in bed, phone in hand, headphones on, quietly monitoring every movement downstairs. Logan came home late, Rachel arrived not long after. They sat close, spoke in hushed tones, and then Logan laughed, wrapping his arm around her waist. I felt like someone was squeezing the air out of my chest, but I forced myself to stay focused. During the day, when Rachel and Logan were out of the house, I quietly searched through the drawer where Logan usually kept his papers. Every receipt for furniture bought for the lakeside apartment, credit card statements, draft contracts for asset transfers, all of them bore Logan's name or signature. I found an entire packet of documents he had already printed out, full power of attorney, clearly stating that if I became incapacitated or passed away, Logan would have complete control over all assets. I photographed each page with my phone, storing the images on my device and immediately sending them to a secure email account I had created. And so, piece by piece, I quietly gathered the evidence. Invoices, documents, chat fragments Rachel left open on her tablet while she fussed over tea, or images of them being intimate right inside this house. All of it became the building blocks for my plan for revenge. At night, when they thought I was fast asleep, Logan would secretly text and call, and Rachel would use the excuse of monitoring my health to stay longer, her eyes constantly scanning the room as if to make sure I wasn't eavesdropping. I wasn't in a hurry. Every time I heard their footsteps in the hallway, I pretended to be exhausted, my eyes half closed as if drained. But inside, my mind was sharper than ever. Then one day, when I had gathered enough evidence, I arranged for my mother's attorney, the one who had handled her inheritance matters, to come to the house while Logan and Rachel were away. I handed him the hard drive along with the stack of papers I had collected. He held my eyes for a moment, his voice growing firmer. "Sarah, what you have here is enough to take them to court. But you need to be prepared. This battle requires not only evidence, but absolute resolve." "I'm ready, because I'm no longer the weak woman they think I am." Since the day I began collecting evidence, every hour, every minute felt like a life or death chess game. I was patient, quietly tracking Logan's and Rachel's every move. The more I watched, the clearer I saw their true selves. One late night, unable to sleep from the nausea after chemo, I opened my phone to check the hidden camera. What I saw on the screen made my hands go cold. Logan and Rachel sitting close together at the dining table, their voices low but clear enough for the recorder to capture every word. Rachel leaned in, her eyes cold as steel. "How much longer are you going to wait?" She's obviously getting weaker. If you keep stalling, everything you promised me will just be empty words. Logan glanced around as if afraid someone might be listening, then lowered his head and spoke softly. I'm getting everything ready. As soon as she signs, the money will be mine. After that, it'll all be over quickly. Rachel folded her arms, her tone firmer. I don't want to keep pretending, just finish it, Logan. I saved that video clip to the hard drive immediately and sent a copy to my attorney. My heart raced, but not from fear, because I knew this was the key moment to bring down those two vile people with their own schemes. Just 2 days later, Logan came home with a folder in hand. He tried to act calm, even letting a fake look of pity flash in his eyes as he sat beside my bed. Sarah, I've found an opportunity for you. A special treatment center in Toronto. They have a new method, fewer side effects, a higher chance of recovery. But you have to sign these papers quickly because spots are limited. I've already arranged everything. I looked up at him, offering a faint smile, as if I completely believed in the kindness he was pretending to show. Leave the papers on the table, I'll sign them tomorrow when I feel clearer. Logan nodded, placed the folder on the table, kissed my forehead lightly and left. When I heard his car fade into the distance, I pushed myself up and opened the folder. Page after page listed terms that sounded reasonable. Financial deposits, temporary transfer of asset management so Logan could handle the paperwork, financial commitments to the treatment center. But when I looked up the center's name on my phone, the result was just a shabby website, messy information, no verified address. The words on the contract blurred before my eyes. This was Logan's final move, meant to strip me of everything left before erasing me from this life. The next morning I called my attorney. I need you to meet me urgently. I have something you need to see. An hour later I sat in his office, my hand resting on the folder in front of me. He flipped through the pages, his face growing more tense with each one. Sarah, this isn't a treatment contract, this is a disguised asset transfer. If you sign this, he'll have full control over all your assets, including your mother's inheritance. I clenched my fists, my voice firm. I won't sign it. And I want to press charges. A spark appeared in his eyes as he glanced at me. You have enough evidence, we'll start immediately. That afternoon I returned home, still keeping up the appearance of weakness. Logan asked if I wanted him to call the Toronto Center to speed up the appointment. I met his gaze, a quiet smile playing at my lips. You handle it, I trust you. But inside, every step was clear. I would let him set the trap himself. And I would be the one to pull the final string. As the first light of day slipped through the curtains, I put on a heavy coat to cover my frail frame, carefully packed the evidence folder, the hard drive, and the crucial documents into my bag. With my attorney's help, we immediately filed civil and criminal lawsuits at the local court and submitted an emergency request to freeze all bank accounts and assets in Logan's and Rachel's names. In the lawyer's office, when he confirmed that the freeze orders had been submitted and the initial injunction was in effect, I simply nodded. All those sleepless nights, all those tears, had now become a solid shield protecting me. On the way home, I pulled over, opened my phone, and typed out a short message to Rachel. I know everything. No need for long words, just those few were enough to make her understand that the play they'd tried so hard to stage had come to an end. I drove back to the house. The house that once held so much love, now just the place where I would take the final step of my plan. I changed the locks, reset the alarm codes, even hired a technician to install a new smart lock system. Inside the house, only silence remained, and the sound of the wind slipping through a slightly open window. On the dining table, I left a folded piece of paper with a line I carefully wrote by hand. You thought I was weak, now it's your turn to taste it. Then I walked away without looking back, without a trace of regret. Late in the afternoon, as the sun set, Logan came home. I knew he'd be shocked when the old key no longer opened the door, and I could picture his face turning pale when he finally got inside and saw the empty house, with nothing left but the note I had left on the table. Not long after, I got a call from my attorney. Sarah, the bank has confirmed the account is frozen, the court has approved the emergency measures. The assets under Logan's and Rachel's names are being reviewed. You did the right thing. I sat in Emily's living room, looking out at the small yard where the maple trees had begun to shed their leaves. For the first time in months, I felt as light as the breeze. News of the frozen accounts and seized assets reached Logan and Rachel faster than I expected. Just 2 days after the court issued the emergency order, my phone started buzzing nonstop. First calls from Logan's number, then a flood of messages. Sarah, what is this? What have you done? I'm begging you, don't take this too far. We can still fix this. You'll regret destroying this family over a moment of anger. I stared at the screen, my heart steady. That so-called family he spoke of had crumbled the day he and Rachel walked out of that lakeside apartment hand in hand. Soon after, my attorney informed me the Financial Crimes Unit had officially opened an investigation. They started reviewing all suspicious transactions, every sign of fraud and asset theft by Logan and Rachel over recent months. Rachel vanished almost immediately, canceling appointments, shutting off her phone, changing her number. But hiding only made things worse for her. The summons was sent to the lakeside apartment, the very place where she once proudly walked beside Logan, now living proof of their crimes. Logan panicked. He sought out his own lawyer, tried to negotiate with me through intermediaries. But I sent back just one message. I have nothing more to say. This is now in the court's hands. On the day of the trial, Logan entered the courtroom pale, with dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights. Rachel followed, her face bare of makeup, lips pressed tight as if trying to hide her fear. A mountain of evidence was presented. Recordings, footage from the hidden camera, suspicious financial documents, the fake treatment contract, and the disguised power of attorney Logan had tried to get me to sign. Every detail was laid out, clearly, leaving them no room for excuses. At the stand, Logan's voice broke as he tried to speak. I was just under too much pressure. I got caught up in my mistakes. Rachel wasn't really involved. It's all my fault. Rachel burst into tears, crying out, "Don't drag me into this. You promised you'd take care of me, told me to trust you." The courtroom fell silent for a moment at the sight of two former accomplices now turning on each other. I remained seated, my hands folded tightly, my gaze unwavering. At the end of the trial, the judge delivered the sentence firmly. For organized fraud, asset theft, and intentional deception, the defendant Logan Bennett is sentenced to 3 years in prison, no parole. The defendant Rachel Monroe is sentenced to 2 years in prison. Logan spun around to look at me, eyes pleading. "Sarah, please. Ask for leniency for me. I was wrong. Don't do this." I said nothing, meeting his gaze calmly, because I knew that if I spoke words of forgiveness today, I would betray the strength I had fought so hard through pain to build. Rachel was led out of the courtroom, her shoulders trembling, tears streaming down her face, but no one paid attention anymore. Logan lowered his head, walking between two officers, his hands cuffed. I stood, walking slowly outside, stepping into the midday sun. That sunlight felt warmer than it ever had before, because it shone down on a woman who had found herself again. The day Logan and Rachel were officially sentenced was also the day I felt the weight in my heart lift. But I knew my journey wasn't over. After everything I had been through, I needed something more than any verdict. I needed to rebuild my life. The final chemo sessions no longer filled me with fear. I sat in the treatment room, looking out the large window where the soft morning light filtered through the leaves. With each drop of medicine, I no longer saw myself as weak, but as someone slowly reclaiming life, reclaiming myself. The day the doctor gave me my final test results, I didn't speak right away. His smile grew before he said, "Sarah, your numbers are stable. We can stop chemotherapy and move to regular monitoring." Standing under the clear autumn sky, I lifted my face to the breeze. After so many heavy months, I finally filled my lungs with a full, free breath. That day, I stopped by a small hair salon in the old neighborhood where I had lived as a girl. I took off the headscarf that had been my companion through all the months of illness and heartache. The remaining thin strands were trimmed away. The stylist carefully gave me a new haircut, short, neat, full of life. I met my own eyes in the mirror, a gentle warmth rising inside. It wasn't about the haircut, but about seeing the Sarah who had found her strength again. A week later, I went to the small tattoo shop my mother had once taken me to. I chose to have the letter B inked on my wrist. Not to remind me of Logan, but to mark how I had overcome the darkest chapters. It was the letter of my name, before marriage. Before everything got swept into betrayal. I began small habits to care for myself. In the early mornings, I walked around the park near home, quietly watching the still lake and listening to the birds. I cooked simple meals for myself, the dishes I had neglected when I was too busy or too tired. I signed up for afternoon yoga classes, at first just to rebuild my strength, but soon the slow movements helped me find peace in my soul. In the evenings, instead of curling up in bed haunted by painful memories, I opened the window, sat with a cup of herbal tea and reread the old books my mother left me. Forgotten pages that now became a source of inspiration and strength. Logan and Rachel disappeared from my life like a bad dream. Sometimes I'd hear news about Logan, serving time in a correctional facility in a neighboring state. Rachel was no longer mentioned by anyone. But to me they were the past, and I no longer wanted to waste a single moment thinking about them. One winter morning, with frost still coating the branches outside the porch, in front of the mirror, my fingers brushed over the small bee on my wrist, a silent reminder of all I had overcome. And I believed that was the greatest victory I had earned, after all I had endured. My story isn't just about fighting illness or exposing betrayal. It's about finding myself again. From a woman who had been hurt, I learned to stand up, to love myself, and to cherish every moment of life. I understand now that the greatest revenge isn't watching the guilty fall. It's seeing yourself happy, free, and no longer bound by fear or the past. What do you think about Sarah's story and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, meaningful stories about life and family.